Welcome everyone, my name is Brad Chickwin. Today we're going to cover fitness, nutrition, and firefighter rehab. You are more important than the job. The goal behind this program is to bring awareness to fitness, nutrition, and firefighter rehab. My hope is that if you don't currently have a firefighter rehab program or don't prioritize firefighter rehab operations on the fire ground, you will see that this is not only important but required. As it pertains to this program, I have no disclosures. Objectives. We're going to review statistics around firefighter deaths, discuss fitness and routines, review body composition, validate the importance of proper hydration, compare heat exhaustion versus heat stroke, discuss firehouse nutrition versus real nutrition, introduce the concept of macronutrition, discuss nutritional programming, and outline fireground rehab operations. One of the biggest roadblocks I encounter when doing presentations around this topic is the bravado of those who work in the fire service. But I ask you to please reflect and ask yourself, why not? I've heard a whole bunch of justifications on why firefighter rehab is not currently within their organizations. Here are just a few. We don't need firefighter rehab. We know when we need a break. We're good. No thanks. We do have firefighter rehab. It is when we get transported to the hospital. We don't need rehab. We are a fire department. And lastly, our guys are needed for suppression, not EMS. I'm sure each and every one of you have heard something like this within your career around firefighter rehab. Remember, not all superheroes wear capes. The next handful of slides, I'm showing you pictures of firefighters just like you, who have died on the fire ground. Rhode Island, 72 years of age, dies after collapsing on a fire scene. 59 years old, heart attack, collapses at the scene of a working house fire. "42 years old, collapses at the scene, dies. 31 years old, seizure, firefighter dies during a training drill. 62 years old, heart attack. This fire chief dies after responding to a call. 43 years old, heart attack, while using an SCBA, water rescue. 42 years old, stroke, collapses at the fire station. I ask you, are you next? When is this going to happen? And why? Please take a look at this picture. My hope is that this is not the goal you're looking to achieve at some point during your career. Let's look at some facts surrounding the deaths in the fire service. On average, a firefighter dies every 2.7 days. Firefighter deaths in 2024, 72 reported deaths, with 58% of them presumed cardiac due to stress and overexertion. If you look on the column on the right-hand side, look at how many deaths actually occurred outside of the cardiovascular system. Between 2003 and 2012, 7 of our fire friends and colleagues in Maine have died in the line of duty either for heart attack or stroke. And that's from Chris Perret, the EMS liaison from Maine Medical Center. Prevention is the key. And you need 2 things. We need to eat right, and we need to exercise. When you think of fitness nutrition in the fire service, you should be thinking fitness and nutrition, not fitness versus nutrition. It goes hand in hand. Fireengineering.com. For a firefighter to give more than the average citizen, he or she must be physically strong enough to perform such tasks as rescuing victims, moving equipment, and advancing hose line much more easily. So let's dive into our daily routines. What is your typical day? What time do you wake up in the morning? How much sleep do you get? According to a study done at the University of Kentucky, an adult, defined as 18 to 64 years of age, should receive at least an average of 7 to 9 hours a night. Mayo Clinic states, if you regularly log less than 7 hours, you may experience sleep debt, which increases your risk of poor health. So let's start with fitness. What is your definition of fitness? Here is just one example of what fitness is defined, but I really hope it's not what you were thinking. Why? Because fitness consists of many factors. We utilize a variety of movements, different movements, every day to perform tasks. So fitness is all inclusive of these items: strength, speed, cardiovascular capacity, coordination, flexibility, muscle endurance, agility, power, and balance. When it comes to getting out and starting on your fitness journey, you can start with the basics: walking, running, swimming, or biking. If you want to get into more organized, coachable fitness sessions, you get mixed martial arts, weightlifting, boxing, yoga. There are also organized events such as Go Rucks and Spartan races, Tough Mudders, that also are an excellent way to get yourself physically fit. CrossFit, another excellent way to get in shape for fire and EMS, because they utilize compound movements to which we all utilize each and every day. If nothing else, you can always make do with what your fire department has to offer. Some fire departments have nice elaborate gyms, where other fire departments have pieces of equipment that you can utilize, or if nothing else, you can make do with a pair of running shorts, a t-shirt, and some gym shoes, and a couple of your friends at the firehouse, and create a workout. One question I hear all the time: where do I find the time? Long and short of it, you need to make time to take care of yourself so you can help others safely. Many fire departments have a gym. You can use it typically free of charge, on or off duty. Fitness clubs, sometimes we as public safety entities get discounts. There's some really nice home gyms out there. Workout videos, YouTube videos, those are all free. Mother Nature, go for a walk, go for a hike, go outside. Organize events, 5Ks, road races, triathlons. And then there's always personal training opportunities. Here is the $1,000,000 question. Which would you choose? Again, at our firehouses and our EMS bases, a lot of times we are faced with this simple question. My answer, I think you should do them both. Because which one would you strive to be like? The public, because of TV, expect us all to look like the group of folks on the left. Realistically speaking, many of us fall into the category to the picture on the right. On average, 73 to 88% of firefighters are overweight or obese. That's according to the National Volunteer Fire Council. Let's talk about different body compositions out there. What do we actually look like? So here's a picture. I think there's a huge misconception on body fat percentages. Many of us think we are slimmer when it comes to body fat percentage than we really are. What do you think the average American right now has for body fat? The average male American. On average, the body fat of males is right around 28 to 30%. Let's look at the female population. What do you think the body fat composition of an average female in America is? According to the American Council for Exercise, females in America are average between 39 and 40% body composition. So what nutrients do we really need to keep us going? First and foremost, water. Water is the foundation for our bodies to operate. Have any of you guys and girls ever heard of the 3-3-3 rule? When it comes to survivability, we can tolerate up to 3 minutes without air, survive 3 hours without shelter in extreme environments, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Without water, especially during physically demanding activities like EMS and firefighting efforts, we could damage our bodies so badly it could lead to organ failure purely because we don't drink enough water. Water helps us regulate body temperature. It lubricates and cushions our joints. It gets rid of the waste products in our body through urination, perspiration, and bowel movements. It decreases muscle fatigue and increases coordination. The CDC recommends that women consume 2.7 liters or 91 ounces daily, and men should consume 3 to 5 liters daily, which is 125 ounces. How much water do you drink? It's really important to drink up. The amount of fluid an exhausted, warm, and dehydrated firefighter can orally ingest is about 32 ounces or 1 liter per hour due to a delay in gastric emptying time over an overloaded GI system. As we overload the GI system, it causes cramping. Cramping causes a feel of bloating, and then we don't want to drink anymore. That's why it's super important to make sure we prehydrate throughout the day. Fluid loss in an active firefighter. We all know that as soon as we don our structural firefighting gear, by design, you immediately start to sweat. That's due to the vapor barrier in the gear. We don't want contaminants to come in. A side effect of that is perspiration can't get out. Firefighters can lose about 32 ounces or a liter of fluid in less than 20 minutes of strenuous firefighting. Sweating will continue well after the firefighter stops to work. If you introduce that firefighter who's already losing a liter of fluid in 20 minutes during strenuous firefighting, it increases by 25% if that firefighter is doing the same work in extreme weather conditions, whether it be hot or cold. Monitoring hydration. Dehydration interferes with the body's ability to maintain core temp. It lessens our strength, shortens our endurance. As we become dehydrated, we can become nauseated, start vomiting, and making it very difficult for us to orally hydrate. Once vomiting occurs, the vicious cycle starts, and oftentimes we need IV fluids. For comparison's sake, a liter of IV fluid has the same therapeutic effects as ingesting a gallon of water orally. We know water is important, but what also is equally important to consider are the benefits of electrolytes. These electrolytes include sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, and phosphate. Simply put, sweating depletes sodium, exertion can deplete the potassium, and then cramping is going to occur. We want to prevent these cramps before they occur. On this slide, it does a great job of depicting dehydration and weight loss as it pertains to the percentage of weight loss when we start to lose hydration. It is important to point out that if you become thirsty, you've already started to dehydrate yourself. We need to make sure that we sip water and fluids throughout the day. So I'm expressing to you the importance of consuming fluids or water, beverages we should avoid because they don't help us with the proper electrolytes, or some of them actually dehydrate us, is we should be very cautious of sodas, high fructose and high sugar drinks, foods with high protein, high fat content without the built-in carbs, alcohol within 8 hours prior to duty, that makes sense. Excessive fluids, again, overhydration also can lead to problems. And then we should always avoid stuff like caffeine, creatine without copious amounts of water, and tobacco. Easy does it. Again, I touched a bond. Make sure we don't overhydrate. Overhydration can cause hyponatremia, which basically the sodium stores in our body are urinated out. When we start to drop our sodium levels, so now we're talking at the cellular level, we can start to have altered mental status, seizures, nausea, and vomiting just because we're urinating out all of the salt. So salt is important. This chart's become very popular in the public safety world. I've seen them on bathroom walls, at EMS bases, fire departments, and police departments. Also start to see them in gyms, which is great to see. It does a very good job of having a comparison chart for the color of your urine and how it equivocates on how well you're hydrated. The lighter the color of your urine is, the more hydrated you are. Consider these. For firefighters involved in intense physical activities for more than an hour, fluids with a 4 to 8% carbohydrate solution should be considered. So this is the introduction of our sport drinks. We should be consuming 6 to 8 ounces every 15 minutes, ideally. And these drinks should be served room temperature and flavored, as it tends to be more palatable for folks to drink. Why do we want our fluids to be room temperature and not ice cold? Long and short of it is twofold. One, if we serve someone something that's really cold, the body has to work harder to make it warmer for it to be consumed properly, so it uses up energy. And the second being, sometimes introducing ice cold water into a dehydrated or a hot condition of a person will cause them to have cramps. Here's a disclaimer if you decide to use sport drinks in your firefighter rehab program. Sport drinks are designed for a purpose with the correct amount of electrolytes already introduced into the mixture. If you want to use sports drinks, please don't dilute them. Again, they're designed for a purpose. So leave them as is and don't try to water them down or add more electrolytes to them. Let's touch upon 3 common job-related health scares due to lack of proper hydration. The first one, heat exhaustion. That's when the employee, and here's a picture of a firefighter, but it very much could be a police officer or even an EMS employee working at an extensive scene over the extreme temperatures. When you start to feel faint or dizzy, you have excessive sweating. Sweating goes hand in hand with cool, pale, and clammy skin. Rapid and weak pulses. Start to develop muscle cramps, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. You are heading down the road of heat exhaustion. Make sure we treat these folks with fluids in a nice cool area. Take them out of their uniform, meaning their Scott Air Pack, their bunker pants and bunker coat, go right down into their shorts to kind of allow that passive cooling, and then try to encourage fluids. If we push ourselves past heat exhaustion, we could encounter a much worse condition called heat stroke. This, if not corrected, could be life-threatening. Signs and symptoms of a heat stroke is the patient starts complaining of a throbbing headache, a lot of times has vision changes, can't focus. Even though they have pushed themselves to the limits, a huge red flag is that they no longer sweat. These patients start to have a body temperature that starts to creep above 103 degrees. They have red, hot, and dry skin. They're nauseous, maybe vomiting. Decreased LOC is not uncommon. We need to really monitor their level of consciousness and be prepared for seizures if we don't intervene immediately. These are the patients we need to make sure that we aggressively cool them down, ice baths, cold water, and then IV fluid resuscitation for these folks. A third condition that many folks fail to consider when it comes to heat emergencies is rhabdomyolysis, or rhabdo for short. This is where damaged skeletal muscles break down rapidly, causing myoglobin and potassium to be released into the bloodstream, which can cause an acute kidney injury or fatal arrhythmias. People typically think rhabdomyolysis only occurs in crush injuries, which it does, but it's also a very common occurrence with extreme physical activity, severe dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and heat stroke. A person with rhabdomyolysis will complain of muscle pain, tenderness, or aching above and beyond the normal aching that you would have with the physical activity they've done. Muscle weakness or lack of strength in extremities, fatigue, fever, confusion, and then if they urinate, they have very dark, almost brown colored urine. It looks like Coca-Cola. So let's move on from liquid consumption to stuff that we eat. Firehouse nutrition. Doesn't that carb-heavy pasta dinner look delicious? North American dietary changes have occurred over the last 50 years. There's been an increase in processed foods, increase in fast foods, change in carbohydrate, protein, and fat dietary balances. We as a society, at least in America, we have lost the art of portion sizes. I like this picture because it's a good job of depicting a visual cue on what serving sizes should be. Some of you may not know what a CD case is, but it's basically a slice of bread. The big thing I think we overshoot with, at least I do, is an ice cream scoop is a half a cup. That's like 2 bites for me. So that's definitely one I can work on. This, again, is a diagram that I'm a huge fan of because this mentality makes my wife laugh because she's always pushing fruits and vegetables to make sure I eat healthy. When I'm like, hey, I could have a couple apples for 320 calories, or I can just eat a Snickers. The calories are the same. They're equal, right? Not necessarily. What are in my foods? Sometimes healthy alternatives is all somebody needs to be able to tweak their diet in order to make a positive change. If you're craving candy, have some fruit. If you want a little extra salt, maybe there's a seasoning or an herb that would be better. Instead of using whole butter, in theory, use an avocado. Milk, regular whole milk versus almond milk or skim milk, or a bagel versus a banana. We all have cravings, but did you realize that when we have cravings, it's because our body is telling us it needs some sort of nutrient? Loosely speaking, if you start to crave chocolate, maybe you're low on magnesium, try eating some nuts, seeds, and fruits and vegetables instead. Or if you really want that sweet or sugary food, you might be deficient in a few nutrients. So again, sweet potatoes, grapes, broccoli, in place thereof. Instead of bread, typically your body might be a little low on nitrogen. Try some leafy greens or some kale. Oily foods, typically your body's a little deficient in calcium. What about some broccoli? Salty foods, your body's looking for some chloride, a silicon. How about some cashews and nuts? Sometimes we just need to listen to our body. Food pyramids. Many of us grew up with these type of food pyramids where carbs are the foundation or the baseboard and or everything has equal portions. We know that literature has changed and we've upended our food pyramid thought process. As of 2026, our food pyramid is now inverted and it's designed to promote all types of natural foods over processed foods. Doesn't say you can't have them, but they basically want us to shop the exterior of a grocery store before we start going up and down the aisles for the processed food. What is in our food? Basically, our food is made up of macros. Macros are the major nutrients that our body requires to sustain life. You have to feed your body an adequate amount of macros based on your body composition and activity level. Everybody's macronutrient and caloric intake will be different. Macronutrients as a whole, proteins, fats, and carbs. Let's talk about protein. Every part of our cell, tissue, and organs in our body utilizes protein. It's consistently being broken down and replaced. It has digestive amino acids, which our body uses for building blocks. Good examples of protein: lean meats, poultry and fish, eggs, nuts and seeds, milk and milk products, so your cheese and your yogurts, and then supplementation. The CDC would like to see in upwards of about 35% of our daily food intake be from protein sources. The latest literature recommends 1 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram. So if you're a 100 kilogram person, which you're talking about 220 pounds, they want you to have 100 to 200 grams of protein each day, and we'll cover that in some slides coming up. Carbohydrates make glucose, which is a fuel that gives us our energy. Our body uses the glucose immediately. If we don't use it immediately, then it's stored in our liver and muscles for when it's needed. Good carbs, you're talking your fruits, your vegetables, your whole grains, some milk products, and then bad carbs, which are delicious, are the ones that have the added sugars, your cakes, your cookies, and beverages. The new push now is a minimum of 130 grams of carbs a day for basic functionality. Dietary fats. There used to be a concept of you need them in your diet, but only in small amounts. The literature is starting to change a little bit. The big push now is we want to have monosaturated fats, so your nuts, your vegetables, your avocados, that's considered your good fats, but now a lot of literature is starting to push you towards meat fat or red meat, that sort of stuff, that the trans fat isn't naturally bad for you. So again, it used to be bad versus good. Now they're kind of lumping fats more or less into the same category, and they're actually starting to push for us to consume between 44 and 84 grams of fat daily. One thing we make sure we don't forget about is our vitamins and minerals. Minerals are inorganic elements that come from the earth, soil, and water that are absorbed by plants. Vitamins are organic substances made by plants. Animals eat plants. We eat plants and animals. So in theory, we'll get them if we have a nice balanced diet, or you can always supplement them through your local nutritional store. Micronutrients. These are really important for energy production, immune function, bone health, and cellular repair. These are your calciums, your magnesiums, your potassium, sodiums, iron, zinc, vitamin C, B vitamins, vitamin E, and vitamin D. Another thing we can't forget about is fiber. Fiber passes through our digestive tract largely intact, offering critical benefits like regulating blood sugars, controlling hunger, and maintaining digestive health. Each firefighter needs to take an active role in managing his or her health. Incorporating a healthy eating plan along with a regular exercise regimen into his or her schedule enables a member to focus more on the tasks at hand when performing the job. Question: what diet will work for me? Answer: diets don't work. We need to improve our eating habits and determine what works best for us and our lifestyle. Here's a list and types of nutritional programs out there. Again, there are dozens online, but these are some of the big ones. Most importantly, a diet does not work. It's a vicious cycle. Some people can be on a diet for a short period of time. Some people can stay on it for longer periods of time, but once they come off that diet, typically any results that they had earned, they lose. What you need to do is change your lifestyle and your eating habits as a whole. So a couple popular ones out there is a Mediterranean, which introduces whole grains, fruits, veggies, healthy fats, and lean proteins. The DASH eating program is designed to stop hypertension. It uses fruits, veggies, whole grains, low-fat protein, and low-fat dairy while restricting sodium. The Flexitarian is a plant-based eating style with occasional introduction of meat or fish. Weight Watchers uses a point-based system to determine caloric intake. Intermittent fasting. This is where you eat for certain windows and fast for others. A very common one is folks will fast for 18 to 20 hours, meaning they drink as much water as they want, but they won't eat any calories for 18 to 20 hours. And then they have a 4 to 6 hour eating window to which they consume all of their required calories in a small window, but only during that time frame. And there's also South Beach diets, Atkins diet, Paleos, which are the meat-based ones, and then a IIFYM if it fits your macros. I would like to touch upon a gluten-free diet. Yes, it says diet. It's actually not. Gluten-free diets or gluten-free lifestyle is a very high carb concentrated diet where folks who have celiac disease or gluten intolerance react to wheat, rye, barley, and oats. So their food is modified. It's typically not a weight loss program. So the next half dozen slides or so, I'm going to dive into the concept that many of you guys do indirectly and not even realize you're doing it. This is a concept I used over a decade ago and intermittently still continue to use it because my body responds very well to it when I utilize it. So basically, my caloric intake is based exclusively on protein, carbs, and fat, aka macros of my food. In this lifestyle of eating, no foods are off limit within reason. I found it to be very adaptable to everyday lifestyle, so I didn't feel like I was missing anything. It uses a concept of 6 to 8 meals a day, 2 to 3 hours apart, so I kind of graze and eat frequently. Typically used by bodybuilders. This is when I decided to use it when I wanted to compete a dozen years or so ago. It's also referred to as flexible dieting. So basically, meet with a nutritionist or you figure out what your baseline macronutrient amount is, and then you have your calories set for you. So let's say I have a calorie diet of 2,440 calories, which is broken down into these types of macros: 60 fats a day, 250 carbs a day, 225 grams a day. What I tried to educate in this slide is not every gram is equal. If you have a fat gram, and we'll look at some labels coming up, for every 1 gram of fat, it equals 9 calories. For every 1 gram of carb, it equals 4 calories. And for every 1 gram of protein, it equals 4 calories. Meaning, out of my 2,440 calories a day, 540 calories come from fats, 1,000 calories come from carbs, and 900 calories come from proteins. So let's go over a sample breakfast. So this breakfast consists of 3 egg whites, a slice of wheat toast to which I had a tablespoon of butter, a medium apple, and an 8-ounce glass of milk. With these 5 items, looking at the labels, there's 15 grams of fat, 15 grams of carbs, and 26 grams of protein with all of these items. So let's look at this sample snack. Again, I'm eating at this point every 2 to 3 hours. It's made up of yogurt, a banana, and a quarter cup of almonds. So you add those 3 things together off the nutritional labels. It consists of 16 grams of fat, 55 grams of carbs, and 23 grams of protein. Because in this way of eating, if it fits your macros, everything's in play. There's nothing wrong with sliding in a sweet treat. So if you look at this box of these Yasso Greek yogurt bars, if you haven't had them, they're delicious. 1 bar is considered a serving. There's 0.5 grams of fat in this. There is 18 grams of carbs in this. And there's 5 grams of protein, which turns out to be, looking at those numbers, excluding the cholesterol and the sodium, it's 96.5 calories. So that's why they advertise it pretty darn close to a 100-calorie snack. So let's do the math. So I've had breakfast, I've had a snack, and I had a sweet treat. And now it's noontime. I want to go to lunch. In those first 3 eating opportunities, I utilized those grams of calories. I just do the simple math and it gives me what's remaining. So remaining for the rest of the day, after consuming those 3 treats by noontime, I had almost 29 grams of fat, 124 grams of carbs, and 171 grams of protein left. And that's how I would eat. Where did I learn this methodology? There's apps out there. I read the book, How to Count Your Macros, by Dr. Sohee Lee. She's wonderful. But that worked for me. It may not work for you. Just know there are a variety of different things out there that work for different people. So some healthy eating tips. Drink lots of water throughout the day. Portion control, moderation is key. Eat your healthy food groups first, so that way there if you get filled up, you ate the good stuff first. Know what you're eating, as we tend to eat a lot of carbs and fats in our daily diet. Don't forget about the proteins, lean proteins in particular. Eat slowly. I'd recommend drinking water while you eat. Beware of those fad diets and rapid weight loss programs, because typically they end up not being successful, because once you come off those quote-unquote diets or those rapid weight loss programs, you typically put the weight back on and then some. And then also it's really important to get plenty of sleep, again, 7 to 9 hours a night. So question, what percentage of diets are actually successful? I have been telling you all that diets are not a good idea when they're not successful. Let's put some number behind it. 5% of diets are successful. So, according to a University of Vanderbilt study, 95% of diets fail. This is not the best mentality to have. I'm on that new diet where you eat everything and pray for a miracle. I want to take a moment to share a personal success story with you all. My hope is you'll take a piece of this away and realize that I'm hoping to motivate and make you realize that no matter where you are in your life, when it comes to your health and fitness journey, you can make a transformation that will make you feel better and more confident. In 2009, I identified that I had a problem with my health and fitness levels. I was a new dad, started a new full-time job, had a little kid, 2 little kids actually, and I was at about 183 pounds. Now, history for me, I graduated from high school, I was at 140 pounds. So me and my skin, I was already naturally heavier at this point. 2011, I made physical fitness a priority in my life. 2012, I started doing my own research. I read all the books by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Like, that's pretty motivational. Then I started educating myself about nutrition and the concept of if it fits your macros. In 2013, I consulted a professional trainer and set a goal of competing in a bodybuilding contest in 2014. So the bottom is my before and after picture of my journey. Again, I set that goal in 2013 to compete in a bodybuilding contest. I competed in an all-natural bodybuilding contest in Massachusetts on April 19, 2014. I came in 4th place in the men's physique division. It was a huge thing for me, going from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. But it can be done. The local newspaper got wind of the competition and somebody in town that actually competed into it. So I was interviewed for the paper with the effort again to help people get beyond a place where they felt stuck when it comes to their physical fitness and wellness journey. To this day, fitness continues to still be a part of my daily routine. The next slide or 2 or 3 are all pictures of the gym my wife and I have built in our basement. Why it's important is both of my kids grew up around physical fitness and wellness. And to this day, both of my kids are both very physically active. They both go to the gym a lot. They take care of themselves, are in good shape. I think it was because my wife and I were able to set that example for them and show them that health and fitness is important, and we made it a staple in our daily routine. The most annoying are people in exceptionally good shape at the gym. Some people are like, hey man, what are you doing here? Just know not everybody has those physiques, but everybody's usually reaching for a goal. So we've covered fitness and nutrition in the fire service. Let's dive into rehab on the fire ground. Do you know, or does your organization have a firefighter rehab as part of its emergency operations? What do you think firefighter rehab consists of? And what you've learned so far, do you think we still need it? This mentality is lethal. Rehab is for quitters. It is not. It's very important. So whether you're a firefighter in the fire suppression efforts or you're the EMS standby team, just know rehab is important and is actually required. The National Fire Protection Agency requires it. NFPA 1584 a standard for rehab process for members during emergency operation and training exercises. So again, it is required. What is firefighter rehab? An intervention designed to mitigate against physical, physiological, and emotional stress of a firefighter in order to sustain a member's energy, improve performance, and decrease the likelihood of on-scene injury or death. Folks, this is designed for us. Injuries and deaths. Studies have shown many firefighter deaths occur during the active phases of fire suppression, but a large percentage of deaths occur up to 24 hours post-incident. Establishing a rehab resource. It's up to the IC on the scenes to ensure that a rehab area has adequate resources. NIMS recommends one EMS provider for every 5 members in the rehab area, meaning an ambulance backs up with 2 providers in it. In theory, they should be able to handle or monitor 10 total patients. What we don't want to do is put a lonely chief or an EMS deputy chief on a rehab sector all by themselves with 30 guys and girls coming off the fireground. 1 EMS member for every 5 firefighters. Outside agencies, Red Cross, Salvation Armies, auxiliaries can be used to support this, but again, it needs to be done by a licensed EMS entity. And then again, if you have somebody from the outside coming in to help, they must adhere to what rehab consists of, meaning the days are over to which they back up the Dunkin' Donuts truck and they hand out a bunch of donuts and coffee. We have learned from that. As you've learned in this presentation, we need to make sure we have more whole, hearty food out there being offered to the firefighters. So now it's more common to see these outside agencies bring protein drinks, flavored waters. I've seen soups, I've seen sandwiches, I've seen salads. So just definitely stuff, protein bars, something more than just coffee and donuts. Who should manage a firefighter rehab? Ideally, you'll have a designated EMS team set up to it. So whether it's internally through your own fire EMS department where you have, say, a second or third line ambulance come in and their exclusive details duty is to just deal with that, or you have an outside entity come in, an EMS only agency come in and do it. But the big thing is when you have a firefighter rehab sector set up, that EMS unit is non-transporting. Again, that EMS unit cannot take a down firefighter and leave the scene, then leave that fire scene unattended. So in theory, you should have one ambulance doing nothing but firefighter rehab and then a second ambulance on standby or close by to transport if you need. The EMS provider in charge of the rehab sector is the one and only one who determines whether a firefighter is ready to go back to work. This is not the decision of the incident commander. It's the decision of the person who manages rehab. Where should it be set up? When it comes to staging a rehab, we need to make sure that it is protective of wind, precipitation, and direct sunlight. It doesn't do any good to pull your firefighters off of a fire suppression effort just to try and put them in the middle of a field with no shade or in the middle of a storm or rain. You need to make sure they're protected so that way there you can do your assessments and provide the adequate rehab possible. Do you work for an agency or know of an agency that could respond mutual aid to you, which has specialized rehab vehicles? A lot of times there are old out of commission school buses or bread trucks or UPS trucks. Something kind of has a flow pattern, so you can come in one door, go out another in theory, to which you can cycle people through, heated, warmed areas, AC areas, something out of the elements. They're very, very nice. One that comes to mind who has a very nice setup is the city of Biddeford. They have an old converted school bus as part of their rehab program. Accessibility. We need to make sure that when we are setting up rehab, the area itself makes sense. It can't be too close to the scene or it'll be in the way, but if it's too far away, nobody will come. Also, when it comes to restriction, we need to make sure that the media doesn't infiltrate our rehab area. And please remember that anybody at any given time has a camera, meaning their cell phone. So you need to remain professional and be careful what you say regarding your team, regarding the efforts, or regarding the home or the incident that you're trying to mitigate, because there might be either members of the family or the media taping you live time, Facebook Live, during that incident. So what is wrong with this picture? Got a nice rehab area set up, but no, that is not a bad clarity picture. That's smoke. We need, when we build these rehab sectors, make sure it's in a smoke-free environment, of course, as well as the elements. But we need to make sure that it's further enough away so that way the people that are involved in direct operations are able to work freely without having the input or the stimulus of the people in rehab distracting them. On the flip side, when people go to rehab, they really need to decompress and be taken away from that incident so that way they can rest. So we need to make sure that they're not like right in the heat of it or in the hot zone during this phase. Site characteristics. Again, not too far or too close to the incident. Need to have adequate space for PPE removal. A lot of times, incident commanders like to have their firemen or firewomen take off their gear and put it down on tarps and not just drop it in the grass or drop it in the mud or in the water. Protect them from environmental conditions. Adequate size to handle the expected number of firefighters. Doesn't do any good to run a rehab sector out of the back of a command SUV that has a deputy chief that's sitting on the bumper of that command SUV with 4 bottles of water. Like, not applicable to most incidents. It's not the proper way to do it. Doesn't mean you can't use that command SUV as part of it. Maybe they have the tarps and they have the boards and they have some supplies in it, but that shouldn't be the end-all be-all. Rehab sector is the IC going, hey, you come out of the building, go over there and talk to the deputy over there that's sitting in the backseat of his SUV. Not appropriate. You need to make sure you have adequate space for medical monitoring, and then we need to make sure we control the egress and the ingress for accountability. We all want to help. We want to go back to the scene and continue with our brothers and sisters out there, but we need to make sure we check in with rehab before and after we leave. That way there we know that we're ready to go. And again, that EMS sector gives that firefighter permission to go back to work. Not just grab a bottle of water, grab a new air tank and go back in. Per NFPA 1584, rehab operations shall be provided in accordance with fire department standard SOPs. So if your organization does not have a rehab SOP, it is required. Emergency medical services staff in the rehab sector shall have the authority as delegated from the incident commander to use their professional judgment to keep the members in rehab or to transport them for further medical evaluation or transport. Again, the EMS folks running this rehab sector are the ones that will tell you if you're cleared to go back to work. As it pertains to medical monitoring and emergency medical care, EMS shall be available as part of the incident scene rehab for evaluation and treatment of members. Basic life support shall be the minimum level of available care. I will always advocate for ALS, meaning a paramedic sitting in this rehab sector. EMS shall also evaluate members prior to release from rehab to ensure there are no obvious indications that would prevent them from safely performing full duty activity. We don't want to send someone out back into the firefight who's dizzy, or someone who's retching, or somebody who has a twisted ankle. Okay? If you have an issue, before you leave, you need to make sure you get assessed by the medical team. It's for your safety and the safety of your brothers and sisters that are in the firefight. When it comes to the rehab efforts, the goal of rehab is relief from climatic conditions for rest and recovery of the firefighter, active or passing cooling and warming if needed, rehydration is a big one, calorie and electrolyte replacement, medical monitoring, member accountability and release. Important test question. Please read this 3 times over. Members shall undergo rehab following the use of a second 30-minute self-contained SCBA cylinder, a single 45-minute or 60-minute SCBA cylinder, or 40 minutes of intense work without an SCBA. Again, you need to go see a rehab person to evaluate you after you've completed a second 30-minute SCBA cylinder, utilized a single 45-minute or 60-minute SCBA cylinder, or 40 minutes of intense work without an SCBA. This, folks, will turn into our prolonged police standoffs. This will be our in intense heat. This could also be the wildland firefighting. This could be river rescue. This could be anything else outside of fire suppression. And again, depending on the environmental factors, the IC might tell the rehab sector, hey, I only want these folks to use one bottle before they come to rehab. At a minimum, we also need to make sure during our medical monitoring, which includes pulse, respiratory rate, blood pressure, EKG, if applicable, temperature, SpO2 reading, and CO reading, if applicable, to make sure we include a physical assessment. Because again, vitals only show a piece of the puzzle. We need to make sure that we actually use our EMS assessment skills to assess our patient. So what do I need to run a successful rehab sector? You need an ambulance, that's important. Oxygen, airway supplies, an EKG monitor, so a life pack or a Zoll, some blankets for the cold weather, pulse, ox or end-tidal CO2 if applicable, orthopedic supplies for bumps and bruises and fractures, bleeding supplies, cardiac meds, cyanide, antidote kits if applicable, stretchers if we need to transport, and then hand washing and decon supplies. This station, if able, should be supervised by a paramedic. When it comes to medical monitoring, I want to touch upon CO assessments. So carbon monoxide, most commonly encountered contaminant found in environmental studies of firefighters. As EMS personnel, in the rehab sector, we need to make sure we alert for the symptoms of CO poisoning. Remember, CO can be detected through exhaled CO measurement in the bloodstream or a pulse CO monitor. And remember, CO is always present. Assume it is always present during the overhaul process, among other respiratory contaminants. When it comes to the finger probe CO monitoring, just know a normal value for a non-smoker is 0 to 5. Smokers live in that 5 to 7% of the baseline. When you start to get CO readings of 10 to 15%, we need to assess for signs and symptoms of CO poisoning. And then if it's greater than 15%, they need treatment with hyperflow oxygen. And then they must remain in the rehab sector until these numbers normalize. Again, if they're altered or you think there's CO poisoning involved, they're going to be transported and then ultimately end up in a hyperbaric chamber. So your firefighters come to the rehab sector. What are you looking to evaluate? Signs and symptoms, dehydration, pulse rate, what's their skin condition, how are they breathing, how do they look? Chest pain, dizziness, shortness of breath, weakness, nausea, headache, and any generalized complaints. Stress or cold or heat emergencies, any mental status changes, game over. Behavior changes, changes in speech, changes in gait, also known as ataxia, or abnormal vital signs per department guidelines. Again, we do this for all of our patients anyway, but we need to make sure that we don't miss any of this during that rehab process. The medical rehab decision-making scheme falls into a typical triage process. So you have the medical eval. Those patients either fall into a red, which means they need to be transported immediately. Yellow, they need close monitoring and treatment in the rehab sector. Or green, they can be released to rehab. These are the folks that look great. The vital signs are awesome. They have a drink of water. If they look good to you, they're back to baseline and they go back to the fire. As it pertains to transporting folks on scene, a transport-capable ambulance must be available on scene to assure rapid transport. The transport ambulance must not take the EMS personnel used in medical monitoring. So not only do you need another ambulance on scene to transport because you don't want to strip your fire incident scene of your rehab ambulance, but you can't strip the rehab ambulance personnel, aka the paramedic, to go on that transport. We need to have a whole second crew ready to go. Members shall rest for a minimum of 20 minutes following the use of a second 30-minute SCBA, a single 45 or 60-minute bottle, or 40 minutes of intense workout. So again, go through 2 bottles, you're out of the game for 20 minutes, ideally. The member shall not return to operation if she or she does not adequately feel rested, if EMS sees evidence of medical, psychological, or emotional distress, or if the member appears otherwise unable to safely perform his or her duties. If you have any firefighters that fall into this category, you sideline them and you need to let the IC know what's going on. If one or more of the crew members is seriously injured or killed during an incident, all members of the crew shall be removed from the emergency responsibility at the incident as soon as possible. Mental health services shall be made available to all members of the department. So again, you might be doing everything right, but if the rehab sector or the IC pulls you out because of something that's very traumatic, you're done. But we're going to do that when it's safe to do so. 68% of firefighter deaths are either heart attacks or strokes. That's via FEMA. Post-incident rehab. Post-incident rehab is just as important as rehab at the scene. We should have a policy on what we do post-incident. And at a minimum, supervisors should encourage continued fluid intake after the incident and allow all working personnel the ability to shower. We know contaminants on our skin increase our likelihood of cancer dramatically, so it's important to shower as soon as possible. Per NFPA 1584, documentation needs to be done. There always needs to have medical documentation at these incidents to prove that it occurred. As it pertains to medical documentation, it does not mean that every person coming into rehab needs an EMS run report done. What NFPA requires is some sort of standardized form, and here's an example of one, to which can document when people come into the rehab sector, the time they came in, the vitals that were taken, any medical complaints, and then if and when they went back into firefighting. Again, this form or some type of form like this needs to be done on those incidents to prove that people went into the rehab sector, they had their vitals taken, they didn't have any complaints, or they had complaints, and when they went back into working. As part of a firefighter rehab prep, I designed this form that you guys are all welcome to use or copy or some sort of variation thereof, that was created to get a baseline set of information on my firefighters. Why this was important, and I got a chance to use it a couple times, unfortunately, is when I was in the rehab sector and they pulled a firefighter out, I had a baseline set of information should that firefighter go south. Meaning, if God forbid they pulled him out and he's unresponsive or having a true medical emergency and he can't communicate with me, if he or she participated voluntarily in this screening, I would have a baseline. And this screening consists of their name, date of birth, address, ICE is in case of emergency, what hospital they like to go to, who's their doctor, any medical issues whatsoever, any meds, any allergies, and then baseline vital signs taken in the back of the ambulance in private with me in a nice, calm scenario. So that way there I have a baseline set of vitals to which that patient lives a majority of their life. So that way there I have something to compare it to when it comes to the vital signs I'm taking on the fireground. If you decide to use a form or any sort of forms, make sure all those materials go to the incident commander upon closure of the rehab sector. You still must complete a MEFRS run report on any firefighter that you end up transporting or treat above and beyond the outlined rehab criteria. Again, that criteria should be outlined in your SOP. If you set up rehab and nobody comes through, or because the incident is too small, or you have multiple firefighters come through, but none of them have any issues out of the ordinary, they all drink some fluids and go back to work, you still need to complete an EMS standby report, so that way there, if that run was to be audited at a later time, or God forbid there's a firefighter fatality or some sort of serious injury, when the IC gets all of his documentation to present to the fire marshal's office or anybody else, he or she can prove that they had a rehab sector in play that was either part of or was going to be part of that incident. Again, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. I always want to circle back to this because there is definitely some pushback in the field with this. All personnel on the fireground must know that the EMS providers in the rehab area have been given authority through the IC to keep them on the sideline. There's no point in arguing. Please don't. Listen to the healthcare providers that are there to look out for your safety. That's all they're looking out for, is to make sure you are good to go and that you can return home to your family. So now that you have some time to think of it, does your agency have a policy on firefighter rehab? Do you respond to a fire department or another agency as your EMS sector? And if you do you know what their requirements are? Again, NFPA 1584 requires you to have something in writing. Are you worth it? I would say yes, absolutely. Take the time. Rehab is important. If they have a program like listed on the screen right now that allows you to voluntarily participate in, please do so. Coming from the rehab sector, it'd be really nice to have a baseline set of information on you should you have to come see me. This is an example of one that I did for department. Those are not my demographics. It's just an example. Summary. Rehab on the fireground is an NFPA standard. Each department should develop and implement a firefighter rehab program. The role of the EMS personnel in the rehab area, whether it's fire or non-fire base, should be clearly defined. EMS personnel must have the authority to make medical decision capabilities in the rehab sector. An effective, well-organized rehab system can save firefighter lives and promote longevity in the fire service. Please, please, please don't let this be you. Take the preventative measures outlined in this program through nutrition and fitness to hopefully keep you out of this situation. After all this, if you still don't believe fitness, nutrition, and firefighter rehab is important, then a homework assignment I have for you is I would like you to write an I'm sorry letter to your family, letting them know why you chose not to make a change in yourself or the system that you work in to make sure you go home to them. Thank you very much for taking my program. I hope you took something away from this information and the importance of having a set up EMS rehab sector on your fireground. Doesn't matter who is staffed by, whether it's your own staff or a mutual aid EMS agency, but it's important. It's there for us. It's there to make sure that we go home. And it's there to make sure we can continue to do this job. If you have any questions, please reach out to the email below. If not, please be safe out there and take care of each other. Have a good day.